I've been asked to show how I add my signature to my photographs, so I thought I would start with this one of the hummingbird. The first thing I try and do is decide where I want to put my signature and then decide what kind of a font will look best in order to do that. And in this case, I thought I'd put the signature on the branch, and I wanted it to look like it was carved or etched into the wood. So I usually search the free font sites for something that I think will work. And for the wood, what I came up with is a font called Mr. B. And here's an example of what that looks like. I thought it's pretty neat. It gives you kind of a scratched look to it. So at any rate, that's the one I use for the branches. So let's go back to the hummingbird. Usually all I do is select a color from the wood itself. In this case, I selected, I think, the dark. I'll go ahead and turn the font layer on so you can see that. Let me zoom in a little bit so it's a little more clear. Okay, so it's kind of a gray color. And then what I do next is to rotate it so that it lines up with the branch so it looks like it should go there. To rotate the text, just be sure you're on the text layer. As you can see over here on the right, it's highlighted. And then come over and be sure you select the text type tool. And that way, when I click on anywhere on the text, it will select it. And then by holding down the control key on the Windows, that brings up this little double pointed arrow so that if I hold down the left mouse button, now I can rotate the text wherever I want. And we'll try and get it back. And anyway, that's how you rotate text, just by holding down the control key. I think it's a command key on Mac, but I'm not sure. Anyway, let me hit control Z, command Z, and that will reset the type the way I had it. And of course, I want to add a bevel and emboss to it so it looks like it's actually in the wood. So let me turn that effect on. And that's basically just as you can see here under bevel and emboss, I'm using the emboss style down, and this is the depth, in this case 178%. I changed my light to suit so that it causes the highlights and shadows within the font to look the way I want. And the size, I adjust that. Usually the smaller the better. Sometimes on my screen, pardon me, on the highlights and shadows, I can adjust those to emphasize one or the other, whatever I prefer. And sometimes I can even just reduce the opacity of the font color itself. So all you see, the only thing visible is the highlights and shadows altogether. But as it is now, this is pretty much why where I like it. So I'm going to just say OK and close that out. Now, of course, the font the way it is now is sitting on top of everything else. You can see it's the W, for example, is on top of the claws. So the next thing I do is to select first the layer of the bird, and then I'll use the quick select tool. And I can come over here and select the part of the claws that I want to copy onto a separate layer. Now I'm going to go ahead and turn the layer on that I've got, or at least I'm going to hit Control and then click on that layer, and that will show what I highlighted originally. That's what I plan on making a copy of. And you can see it's right here is the copy. Let's go ahead and make a second copy. And to do that, I just hold my quick select tool over it and right click and come down to layer via copy. Okay, and now down here you can see that's made a second copy, but it's underneath the text, so it doesn't make any difference. It's not showing up. So the next thing to do is just to grab it and drag it above the text, the font layer. So now it looks like the text is behind the bird's claws. And that's basically about all there is to it. This kind of gives the signature the look that it's been scratched into the wood and that the hummingbird, of course, is sitting on top of it. Let me go ahead and put that back down to a more normal viewing size. And that's really all there is to it for the branch. I hope that was informative and it made sense. Thanks.